speak electric guitar and fire orange and bright blue. 'Cause I was raised on rock and roll.
Thank you guys for making all this out. We can ship this now. We're Cricketbows from Dayton, Ohio.
I think we've kind of moved past the psychedelic thing. The psychedelic side of music is always going to be a part of what I do, I think. But in the world that we live in now, I think getting into something that's deeper than that, something that's more personal than that, is more what we're about right now. Because we had just finished communion and we're looking at that whole thing of now what do we do to sell that CD? Like we're gonna try to tour now, or we're gonna do this to sell that, and then like almost immediately Zach called us to come in, like go ahead and come in and start recording the next thing. We didn't really have anything.
Yeah, we're great.
Raised on Rock and Roll has had a few forms. It has been called the Spherical. It has been called A Fork in the Road. It was a concept album at one point. It was going to be the soundtrack to a film. And it kind of metamorphosized into what is before you. Some progressive country rock, psychedelic magic.
We should start again and just do the drone the whole time.
Cricketbows is many things, and that's part of what makes the band really special. It's a combination of seasoned, professional, amazing players coming together to create this sound. And the sound, for somebody who hasn't gotten to experience the band yet, combines some of my favorite things like late 60s and early 70s, like dark psychedelia. So you've got that really, really solid driving rock and roll. You've got incredible harmonies.
Does not lie, should tell you right.
So you've got a big enveloping wall of sound, but you've also got thoughtful lyrical sensibility and theming and ideas behind the album that on the one hand make for great rock songs, but on the other hand, if you're willing to take that experience along with the band, it can transport you someplace else. You're not only going to have a great rock and roll experience with Cricketbows, but it's also like they put you in a place. And that's something really special that not every band seeks to achieve. And even the ones that do, they don't all achieve that.
I speak electric guitar.
The studio is called Candyland Recording Studio, and it's in Dayton, Kentucky, which I joke with Kim and Kelly deal that it's the sister city to Dayton, Ohio, because Kim would always say that it's exactly 1 hour and 1 minute from her door to mine. It would be confusing if people that don't know Dayton, Kentucky, because it's kind of a small little river town on the Kentucky side of the Ohio River. So a lot of times when I say Dayton, people just, and I mean it still happens, people just assume that I messed up and it's Dayton, Ohio or something. So anytime I'm giving directions, I always make sure I say it's a whole different state. You know, you gotta go to Dayton, Kentucky.
Okay.
I think the album is really cool. It is really cohesive. The flow is excellent. What I love about the new record is it's cohesive. The bass is not hidden. The drums flow really well. And the way that you guys are able to bend your vocals around each other really shows that you've been thinking a lot about this, but even more so that you are comfortable with each other. You're patient with each other, and you don't step on each other unless you're trying to create an effect on purpose.
Not sure if that last note was correct.
When we first went in to record, it was right after we had finished Communion. And it was just that kind of, all right, let's get this going. Let's get these new songs that we kind of sort of have an idea of what we're gonna do, kind of. And like it was an interesting experience to kind of write in the studio when we went to Howler Hills the first time. I think it really kind of pushed us in directions that we wouldn't necessarily have gone. But I think it was good to have that kind of impetus to like, we need to get this stuff down now. And then with everybody's schedules, with all of us and with Zach and with everybody being in other bands and having so much other stuff going on, seemingly unfortunately, it kept not working out to go back and finish them, that they were able to evolve more. And we were able to like, oh, well, I liked how we were doing that originally, but I think this is a better idea and it's a much smoother kind of thing. And almost, I don't know, there's a weird thing with immediacy being forced can end up almost as false honesty, because it's the like, well, I think this is what we should do. And not the, oh, this is what we should do. Because you're just trying to think about what you should do instead of just doing it. And when there's more time, that can evolve sometimes into what it should be instead of what it started as.
This is called Raised on Rock and Roll.
Raised on Rock and Roll is pretty straightforward about having these roots of music in your past and growing up in the certain era that's very indicative of some classic rock era, the Doors, Led Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac, all these things that people in my generation and older and even younger, I guess, it just kind of brings you back to the roots of where that all came from. The sex, the drugs, and the rock and roll, baby.
Raised on Rock and Roll, title track of the album. It's my favorite track on the album. And coincidentally, I get to start it all by myself. That song is my life as a child, and it's still my life. Like, I still learning about new music every day and learning how to play new music every day. So it's like I feel like being raised on music. It speaks to me as a child, and it speaks to me as an adult. The lyrics just, it's my life as a kid. I've
heard the band play Raised on Rock and Roll before, so I was excited to hear it. I recognized it right off the bat. And this, to me, this version on the album is definitely an evolution of that. You all have just locked in and found like a space for everybody musically that just honors that driving kind of rock and roll. I know the musical roots of a lot of the members of the band, and this just feels to me like such an honoring of who you all are as musicians.
There are points in the song where Erica's holding things, especially later in the song, like the second half of the song, and it's clear to me you're doing that for effect, and it works really well. Also, let's be honest, I would pay good money to hear Erica sing anything. It's one of the things I think is really powerful about Cricketbows is what a great band you guys are. Now, the players are good separately, but together, that gestalt is just something mind-blowing. And I've written a few times on our blog about how much I love your band, so forgive me. But I think what makes Cricketbows magic is how transcendent the band is when you put all those pieces together.
It's just a great song lyrically. And I was just thinking of the lick on, there's a bass lick where you say, and George and Ringo too, he goes, you know, he does like just a taste of Come Together, you know what I mean? So just this way that you just kind of go through and just do these nods lyrically to so many greats, I think is very tastefully and respectfully done, you know. It's a successful kind of like But, I think it's hard sometimes to set out to write a tune like intentionally or with purpose, or to like tell a story. I find is really hard. You have very few words in a song most of the times to like convey a whole arc of a story successfully. And I thought that one, was a good example of that. It's hard to do that. So it does it lyrically, and then it also does it with the music, you know what I mean? There's little subtle things, just thoughtfully done.
Electric guitar and fire orange and bright blue, 'cause I was raised on rock and roll. Say my prayers to St. John, Paul, George and Ringo too, and about to the lightning of Elvis and Bowie and Frehley.
I think the song has an interesting, it's hard to explain. It like grows as it's going along, and there's really cool little things that do change as it's happening, where it's almost the same way that it was the first time we went through it. But by the third time you're into it, there's a whole bunch that's just slightly tweaked. It's one of those, I don't always get into this sort of state of mind when we're playing live, where I just let go, and my mind is just, not that I'm not paying attention, but I'm not like, playing or doing like long division math or something on stage. So I can definitely let go and listen to that. But there's those little changes that'll come up. Chris on the bass hitting a note, or if it's, I'll look over because at Kyle playing the drums, because like all of a sudden there's like a splash of sound coming from him right at like a little cheeky moment. And I'm like, yeah, it just makes me want to smile in the middle of this. And I go, I don't know if anyone else noticed that little tiny change in there. So that, probably that song does that more than anything else that we do. But you really have to listen to it to get those little things that are in there the whole time. And I think it's a great song when you do that. You go, yeah, all right, those guys are awesome.
Fields of rock and roll.
But then with the next song, Gracious Peasant, and that song passed the whole test. I will put music on, and then I'll do other things in the room, and then like, am I drawn to it? And even before the swear word, I was drawn to that song. But it's so different than Raised on Rock and Roll. I don't want to say it's a 180-degree turn, but it is a turn. And this is something you guys do. I think there's some thought to this. Each song takes you on a journey, and then you move to the next song, and there's this whole overall adventure or overall experience that you go on. So that like the first two songs is sort of this really cool statement. Yeah, we can rock out if we need to. And Gracious Peasant for me had this cool feel of like, it feels almost agrarian at times. Like it reminded me of kind of the way Zeppelin would take a turn. Or I'm trying to think who would be a better example. Well, maybe Zeppelin is a good example of that. Where it kind of delves into that territory. You know what I mean?
Gracious Peasant is arguably one of my favorite songs for Cricketbows, truth be told, because we jammed that one in Bissig's basement, the first practice space we all had together. And that actually was what I considered my coming to song for the group, because I wasn't really sure what I was doing at first. I knew, again, I wasn't supposed to be like a backup singer, and I hadn't really found the shoes to fill yet. And that song slaps. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to add to it to make it improved or better. And it just so happens that I was really on an Aretha Franklin kick there for a while, and I was like, I just feel like I need to let her rip on this one. And I just remember saying, I want to try something, and it was out of my element at the time. I let her rip, and that was like, yes, there was an aha moment where I felt like, all right, there's a whole new door, a whole new avenue of vocal possibilities here now. Now we're cooking with fire.
We've come from far off kingdoms to bring you speech. I speak a